All right, ladies and gents, it looks like we are live here. We got everything up and running. Going to do a quick systems check through all the stuff here, and then we are going to get started.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the
Boom, boom. All right, it looks like we got everything up and running here. I do wanted to check the chat. I had a little issue with that earlier, so if you are in here and can throw something in the chat, let me know that that baby's working. Go ahead and fire something in there. All right, well, all the other systems are up and running besides the Artemis itself. So let's get this live stream started. I do have just a quick video I want to throw out to start it off. So let's do that, and then we'll dive in to the good stuff. If you do have questions that you would like covered as we go through this, you can go ahead and put them in the chat as well down there, and I will get to those as we work our way through here.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Capcom, we're go for landing. Altitude 4,200. Houston, you're go for landing, over. Roger, understand, go for landing, 3,000 feet. Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
99, proceeded, 3, 2, 1, ignition. Right away, Houston. Vector grid. Ag thought.
All right, welcome back. So that was just a little preview of the Artemis mission itself and a little history of our trips to the moon. So if you don't already know, the Artemis launch for today has been scrubbed. It's the big headlines right now. There was a leak, another leak in that liquid hydrogen tank that we saw last Tuesday, and the launch itself has been scrubbed for now. They're going to take another look at it. The engineers are looking through it and all that good stuff. And then hopefully they will be able to reschedule sometime in October. I think there's 2 windows to launch in October. The Earth and Moon have to be aligned in just the right way so that we can actually launch these. Can't just launch them every day. So hopefully they'll be able to fix that up. It really depends on whether or not they need to bring the rocket all the way back to the build station to fix it, or if they can fix it right on the pad. But there are a couple of things that I did want to go over. I was going to do some pre-rocket launch briefing stuff anyway, talk a little bit about the mission, and hopefully answer some questions as those come popping in. So we will see if people have questions, happy to get to them. But I do want to go over a couple of the things that the mission was going to, the point of the mission, what the mission is intended to do, why we're going to the moon, and all that good stuff. So I got a couple of things to kind of help me out as we go through here. And the first one that I want to take a look at is the mission directive itself. So this is the mission map. This is all available through nasa.gov, and you can go to the Artemis program on there and find all this stuff for yourself because there is a wealth of information on there. But the main purpose of this mission, the mission that was supposed to blast off today, again, that Artemis 1, the first of the Artemis program, is to test the new Space Launch System rocket, which is the brand new rocket that NASA and pretty much every state in the country and many of the other space agencies around the world have been working together to build to get humans back to the moon. As you saw in that video earlier, humans have not stepped foot on the moon since 1972 when the United States originally left there. So we are looking to enable ourselves to get back there. So here's just a quick map of it. The rocket would have blasted off from Florida, right here, Cape Canaveral, orbited the Earth a couple of times. We'll talk all through the rocket parts in just a minute, but the parts would have, basically the rocket would have come apart, leaving just the Orion spacecraft and a few of the other things that are actually going to go to the moon attached to it. It would have come out, orbited the moon a few times, and then returned to Earth. One of the big parts of this mission is the Orion spacecraft that will eventually have people on board, is that can re-enter and land back safely on Earth in the Pacific Ocean, where it will be recovered by Navy ships that have been training for just such an operation. So again, this mission is a big test of all these systems. There are no people on it. It is just to make sure that everything works and everything flies correctly so that we can start putting people on board these missions and land them on the moon. So the next obvious question is, why would we waste our time going to the moon? We've been there before, collected some rocks, but didn't make a whole lot of other discoveries. And since then, we've kind of just put it in the background of NASA's mind. The moon is not our final destination in this trip. The moon is simply our first step to becoming an interstellar species and landing and living on other worldly bodies. So the Artemis program is the first of many programs that will hopefully develop a lunar colony, a colony of people living and working on the moon, and then a gateway space system that will be orbiting the moon that shuttles or rockets from Earth can link up with, basically use the moon as a gas station and blast us deeper into space. The end goal for right now, and again, it's one of just the first steps, but our big goal for right now of all these programs is to eventually get humans to Mars. We've landed a rover on Mars. We can get there. We can't get people there. It's too heavy, too far, and our systems are not tested to carry people there. So this is just one of the many steps on our way to landing and hopefully staying on the Martian surface. So that is why this program, among many of the other programs being developed, are such a big deal. So on board this ship, like I said before, there are no human beings, but there are a couple of passengers. These are the passengers. Oops. All right, we'll use this picture. These are the passengers right here. So you can see there are a couple of mock-up mannequins. This mannequin wearing this big thick vest, and then this mannequin without the vest. One of the main things that this mission will be testing is whether or not humans can survive both the rocket launch and the trip to the moon. We don't spend a lot of time outside of Earth's atmosphere, Earth's magnetosphere. Earth's magnetosphere is what protects us here on Earth from UV radiation and from other radiation emitting from the sun. Once you leave Earth and get past where things like the International Space Station are, you are bombarded with radiation, and it can be detrimental to the human body. So this gentleman right here, this mannequin gentleman, is fitted with a suit. It's got all kinds of radiation protection and stuff on it, and then the mannequin itself is fitted with sensors that will detect exactly how much radiation they take, and then scientists and engineers can look at that and decide whether or not what kinds of suits humans will need to eventually get into space. This lady mannequin over here is also fitted with a lot of those sensors. You can see these pocket sensors up top and sensors all throughout the body here that will be taking all kinds of measurements, specifically the measurements for vibrations. When a rocket blasts off, it's an extremely violent process. It's basically a controlled explosion in one direction, and it can be so destructive that it can actually rip the spacecraft apart. Not good for anything on board, especially human beings. So they are testing to make sure that humans could survive in the environment and make any engineering changes to the seats, the cabin, things like that they may need to before we put living humans on board. Last thing is the spacesuit itself. This is a mock-up or this is a blueprint, an early design of the spacesuit that the moon astronauts will be wearing during blastoff. So on one of the future Artemis programs. So they need to make sure that everything works. So we have a mannequin, again, not a person inside there. This is a mannequin inside this suit, and they test all the systems and make sure that that suit comes back intact, and then make adjustments as we need to from there. I did mention humans going to the moon. That is not part of the Artemis 1 mission. The Artemis 1 mission, again, is just to cruise around the moon and come back checking all those systems. Artemis 2 will do similar, but more in-depth things. And then Artemis 3 is planned to have humans on board. Very excitingly, Artemis 3 will also have a female on board. That female will be the first female and the only female in the history of our known universe to ever step foot on an intersolar system body, something other than Earth. No female has ever stepped on the moon before. We've sent them to the International Space Station. There are quite a few who have been in space on space shuttles and things like that, but no female has ever stepped on the moon before. Again, just like the video you saw earlier, only 12 gentlemen from America have ever done that. So this lady will be the first female to step foot on the moon. So very exciting for the Artemis 3 program. Next up, real quick, I just want to go over the rocket. I was hoping to be able to show the rocket during the live stream and lay out some of the things, but NASA has, ever since scrubbing the mission, they have stopped all of their live streams of the rocket. So I have a nice little photograph here, and there is one more in-depth photograph here of the rocket itself. So this is that space launch system. It's a brand new rocket delivery system, never been tested in space before. It has been tested on Earth. These engines have all been ignited and blasted in their test facilities, but it has never been tested taking off and escaping our atmosphere. So a couple of really cool new things about this system. It does look, let's see if we can get this one. So it does look a lot like the space shuttle. If you are familiar to the space shuttle rocket launches, the giant orange core engine right in the middle, and then the two solid rocket boosters on the side. So very similar to that configuration, obviously without the space shuttle attached to it. Couple of new things about this. In general, the core stage, which is the largest and most powerful stage of the rocket, is far bigger than anything that has ever been tested ever. It's larger than any rocket that has ever been blasted off the surface of this planet before. The reason for that is it plans on going farther than any other rocket ever before. The two white boosters on the side are the solid rocket boosters. Those are the initial boosters. Those will take it up and start moving it outside of our atmosphere. Those are the initial burn rockets. And then those will separate and fall off. The core stage right here, that center stage, is actually going to provide most of the energy that the rocket needs, which will be getting it into orbit around the Earth and giving it the energy it will need to eventually move to Mars. After about an 8-minute burn of that engine, that core rocket will also fall off, leaving nothing but this top part here. This is the Orion space capsule, the crew module, where the crew, or those mannequins, will be for now. And then there's a few other things. This is a secondary, it's called the interim cryogenic propulsion stage. And that is what will eventually blast them in the direction of the moon. And then that will fall off. And then they will cruise over to the moon with just these two last stages here. It will look very similar to the Apollo missions. The capsule is a very similar shape. And the service module behind it is also relatively similar, with a lot of changes on the inside to it. The last thing that makes this monster a whopping 322 feet is the brand new Space Launch System launch abort system. It is the first manned rocket ever to have a launch abort system. And essentially what that will do is, if anything goes wrong during the rocket launch before it gets into the atmosphere, and this crew module needs to get away from a rocket that is propelling it at 17,000 miles an hour, these little boosters on this top stage here will blast and take the crew module with it, sending the rocket off on its own trajectory and hopefully bringing our crew module a far enough distance away that it can be safely returned to the surface of the Earth. NASA has had several mishaps during launches where rockets have not done what was intended. They have unfortunately lost lives in this process and are aiming to reduce that at all possible costs. And this new launch abort system is the latest thing that is working to keep our astronauts as safe as possible on their mission to the moon and then Mars and beyond that. I'm going to jump over here. It seems, I'm not sure if the chat is functional, but I'm not seeing anything in the chat over there. So I'm going to hold off on that. One of the things we're testing out again for today is the chat functionality. So hopefully I'll get that up and running by the time we actually get the launch. But I did find something on NASA's website, which is an animation of the Space Launch System launching. So I am going to run this animation and we can walk through it as if it was the real rocket launch. Obviously, it is an animation, it's a computer graphic, but a lot of the things that we're going to see here are what we're hoping to see if the rocket were to launch, and we'll hopefully see if the rocket launches in October. So this is an animation, there is no audio to it, so if you can't hear anything, that's the reason it's just an animation. So I'm going to run this and we will walk through it as if it was the rocket launch itself, and we can talk through all those parts that we just discussed earlier on. So these are the main rocket engines. They are the bottom of that core system. This is the cross ignition right here. You can see all these sparks coming out, and the purpose of that is to actually light those engines. Those engines cannot light themselves, so it launches a lot of sparks across there. These tables right here are the umbilical cords. They are the ones that fill it up with all its fuel, and we can see it blasting off there. 2 solid rocket boosters. This is a view from the top of that rocket booster. Cape Canaveral in the background there. One of the things I want you to notice right now as it blasts through this cloud cover is that the solid rocket boosters are the only ones fully blasting. That core stage is lit, but not full power. So again, these solid rocket boosters are what is propelling this into space at this time. Once it gets up, it will start arcing over like this. You will see this in the initial launch, and it will look like it's turning around. Getting into space is not hard. Getting up that high is not hard. Lots of people have done it. Michael Strahan did it just a few months ago. It's not that difficult to get high enough to consider yourself in space. The difficult thing is getting into orbit. That is where a lot of this energy comes from. So you can see there the solid rocket boosters on both sides peeling away, and this core stage igniting now in full blast. There goes the abort system off the top, and our core stage is blasting it again into orbit. Getting into orbit is a lot more horizontal energy than vertical energy. Getting up is easy. It's getting into orbit that's the most difficult part. The core stage burns for about 8 minutes and then will fall away, and now we can now see the Orion capsule on top. That I'm going to mess this one up. I even wrote it down. The inner cryogenic propulsion stage right here, and then our crew would be in here, and then this is the service module. As it's orbiting the Earth, the NASA will be running all kinds of tests, checking the comms, all those systems, make sure that our crew is safe and they are ready for their long trip to the moon. So you can see those solar panels opening up there. It's going to start sending data back to Earth, and there's our there's that second stage that is now blasting it on its trajectory towards the moon. So that will get it out of that Earth orbit that we talked about earlier and start its journey to the moon. Those of you familiar with the Apollo program, the Apollo missions took about 3 days to get to the moon. These rockets are a little bit stronger, so that is a much shorter period. It's down to, I believe, about a little over a day to 2 days. So it is significantly faster, and we are going to be getting there a lot faster. On the way there, once this second stage has officially completely burned up all its fuel, then the rest will come away. One of the side missions of Artemis 1 is to deploy these satellites that it will distribute out once it gets up there. They're known as CubeSats, and it's kind of like a USB system where all kinds of different people, universities and things like that can have developed their own satellites. As long as they fit to the coordinates of NASA, they can strap them onto just about any rocket and send them into space. So as a little side mission, this is sending some of those CubeSats out. This is the, here we go, coming into view here. We have the crew module up at the top and then the service module down at the bottom. The Artemis program is looking to do things a little bit differently than the Apollo program. There is no lunar lander. It's going to look very different. So the actual part that is intended to land on the moon is not attached to the Artemis 1 at all. So there is nothing here that can get passengers to the moon. That is not part of this program. Artemis 3 will have an entirely different system, completely different from the Apollo programs. So it'll do a few orbits of the moon, again, collecting all kinds of data, taking pictures of the surface of the moon, looking for suitable landing spots for future Artemis programs. And then it will there's its burn right there. It will do what is known as a retrograde burn that will blast it out of orbit of the moon and send it on its trajectory back towards Earth. As it continues on this, the crew will be moving themselves from the service module, which has a lot of the life support systems, and they'll be moving into that entry system, so this Orion capsule at the top. The Orion capsule deploys, the service module will be left behind to burn up in Earth's atmosphere. This spacecraft, the Orion capsule, as we said, will be moving much faster than the Apollo program. It will hit the Earth's atmosphere faster than anything man-made has ever hit it before. So the brand new capsule with all its design segments has to deal with temperatures that have never been seen before by spacecraft. So it is all new designed, and this is going to be a huge part of the Artemis 1 test system as well, to see whether or not this capsule can actually make it back to the surface of the Earth. I'm going to pause right there because one of the really interesting things that happens as it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere is that it will go through what is known as a plasma blackout. The heat around the surface of the capsule will get so intense and so hot that it will actually reach temperatures hotter than the sun. Those temperatures are so intense that they interfere with all our radio communication. So at the most intense part with humans returning to Earth's atmosphere, unless some new technology is developed before Artemis 3, we will lose communications entirely with this capsule. So everything will go completely dark. Everything for us on the live stream, everything for NASA, everything will go completely dark. Communications, visual, everything. At that point, people on the Earth cannot yet see it. It's still too far up in the sky. So we basically won't know. Very similar to the 7 Minutes of Terror as the Martian rover landed a few years ago. They will be completely out of radio communication during this time. It's a bit of a white knuckle moment for just about everybody, including the people on board the space capsule. So during that time, there will be no communications until the spacecraft gets back into Earth's atmosphere and begins to cool down, and then the communication will be reestablished. So be prepared for that. Then these drogue chutes will come out. The spacecraft slows itself dramatically as it re-enters Earth's atmosphere, but still traveling way too fast to splash down in the ocean. So these drogue chutes come out, slow it down, and then they release, and then finally our last parachutes deploy, and these will slow it to a very, very slow 2 to 3 miles an hour so that it can safely land on the surface of the water. So you can see they took a while to billow and open up. There they go, fully unfurling, slowing down the entire time. You do not want these coming out at those intense speeds because they will rip to shreds. They'll rip right off, or they will stop the shuttle so fast that no human beings can survive those kinds of G-forces. And then we are hoping for a nice soft landing in the ocean. The parachutes break away, move away from it. There's all kinds of inks and dyes that have been used in the past to help Navy ships identify where it is. With the advent of GPS systems and things like that since the 1970s, I'm not sure exactly what we should anticipate once it makes a splashdown, but we will obviously not have visual contact at this point until the Navy ship's search and rescue cruise, probably a helicopter, first makes contact with the ship itself, and then we will re-establish visuals. So again, all this information that I have pulled here is publicly available. There's no secret to it. It is on the NASA website, nasa.gov, and then you can go, nasa.gov, and then you can go to the missions, and Artemis 1 is the first one there, and it is full of videos, images, media resources, all kinds of good stuff to cover it. And obviously the headline for today is not that. Is that I can't get rid of this thing, is that the Artemis 1 mission has officially been scrubbed for today. So that was a little bit of the background, the information leading up to the launch that I was hoping to do before the launch actually occurred. And it looks like that our we do have some Q&A. Here we go. All right, so we got a couple of people jumping in over there. If you would like to fire some questions into the chat box over on the side there, feel free to jump in. Love to hear from you, and we can answer questions as they pop up. I have somebody today confirming right there. I don't know if they did not hear or not, but the launch, Artemis 1 launch for today has been scrubbed. Again, that hydrogen leak, it will not be launching. So it will not be launching today. There is no live feed. I may be able to find a live feed from someone other than NASA that is still showing the pad itself with the rocket on it, and we can actually see it. Or I can grab the... it looks like we do still have some. Yeah, so they're still running scrub operations. I'm going to mute this because I'm not sure who's on this one. But here it is on the pad right here. It was, let's see if we can go back to when they started venting that hydrogen, or the hydrogen started spilling out. It looks like this one was not started. There we go. So if we look at the very beginning, nope, that's just a cloud in the background. So there was a leak in the upper portion of the Space Launch System, that core stage right here. It'd actually be part of the secondary stage, but the core stage right here had a hydrogen leak. Hydrogen is the fuel that this thing is using to get into space. So it is not safe at all to launch this thing with a leak of our fuel system. So they did scrub it. They'll be draining, they will be draining all the fuel out of the rockets, and then engineers will go in and assess it and decide whether or not they can fix the problem, refill it, and launch it again soon, or take the entire system back to the building where it was constructed and have to maybe kind of pull it down and look back at it there. All right, so still not seeing any questions down there, so I got no questions to cover right now. I did want to walk, where did that live stream go? Here we go. I did want to walk through what we should expect on the launch pad, and the NASA didn't have their live streams open earlier, so we can take a quick look right now. Some of the things that you see here and will see as this begins. We have these big poles here that have always bothered me, why there are big random poles around the Space Launch System itself. There we go. Why these are always around rocket launches, and they are lightning towers. So if you have ever been to Florida, you're probably well aware of the weather down there. We can even see some weather coming in the background here. And it looks like there is an announcement. This is not verified. It's coming from whoever's live stream this is, that the next launch window may be September 5th. So just a few days away. It's 2 days away. What is that, Sunday? No, Saturday's today. Sunday. That's Monday, Labor Day. So if there is a launch scheduled for the 5th, then we will absolutely go live again. I'll skip the whole beginning sheboygan. You can watch this video from before and check all that out, but we will absolutely go live if there is another launch. Speaking of these towers around the launch system here, those are lightning towers. Florida is very well known for its unpredictable weather, and if there was lightning, the last thing that anybody wants is for the lightning to make contact with a rocket ship full of explosive fuel. It'd be very, very bad. So they have these towers. They're very large, much larger than the rocket itself. Lightning tends to go to the tallest structure, and I'm sure there are all kinds of technologies on board there, basically acting like a magnet to lightning. One of the other things that you will see, and it may be over on the right side right here, just out of frame, is a giant water tower. When the rocket blasts off, you saw the heat from the engines. It gets incredibly hot. So hot that it would pretty much destroy anything underneath it, whether it was concrete, steel, it doesn't matter. It would burn right through it and it would destroy it. So there's a giant water tank that just before the rocket launches will begin dumping, I believe it's around 250,000 gallons of water, or maybe it's 250,000 gallons of water a minute. It's a lot of water, and it will begin dumping that water all over underneath here so that everything underneath is protected basically by a layer of water. As it blasts off, a lot of that water is evaporated by the extreme heat, but it does protect the concrete and steel structure underneath. So you'll always see a water tower near these, near these rocket launches. That is just about everything that I have for today. It looks like we have some people who are going to be removed here. It looks like we got a couple of questions here. It looks like we have a bunch of people asking when the launch is going to happen. And unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, the launch is scrubbed for today. So the launch will not be happening today. I just saw, we can check NASA's website to see if they updated it. It looks like the only thing that they have here is that there will be a press conference at 4 o'clock today, most likely deciding on when they think they can get on there. But there is no guarantee. There's the water tower I was talking about earlier as well. There's no guarantees, so we will be crossing our fingers, hopefully, for a speedy launch within this launch window that we are currently in. If we miss this launch window, we'll have to wait until, I believe, the next launch window is mid-October. Check over here. We have some Spanish. A qué hora es el I'm guessing a little bit with the Spanish. I believe that means what hour is the launch. So the launch is unfortunately delayed for today. So it will not be happening today. The counter is no longer there. There was a counter earlier this morning. The counter stopped, I believe, at just after T-minus 4 hours, which was when the hydrogen tank began to leak. What was the reason for the scrub? Great question. So I do want to try, I believe NASA should have, let's try and see if we can find the actual leak itself. NASA's feed from earlier may no longer be live, but it should still be on here. It's going to be a few hours long because they did start it. I closed out of it thinking I wouldn't need it, and now I'm looking for it. Let's see if we can go back. Here we go. Perfect. That was actually a perfect. So right here, this was the, here we go. Perfect. T-minus just under 4 hours. So this is NASA's live stream channel. This is what we would have been following. This is what I would have been presenting had the rocket launched, and we would have watched it on here. This is the loading stage. So this is the filling stage. They are filling all of these boosters, and you can see right here in the side of this, the top of the core rocket, which is where the hydrogen is stored, right in this tank. Excuse me, it's oxygen, liquid oxygen. I believe it's hydrogen that leaked, but it looked like the leak was a little bit higher up. So I will double check my information on that. Everything that I've seen has said a hydrogen leak, but you can see that there is something leaking out of there. If I play this, you can see gaseous clouds coming out. That liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen are being stored at extremely low temperatures, so they immediately boil upon contact with the air. That is the fuel for this rocket. It's pretty impossible to launch a rocket as it's leaking fuel. It's impossible and extremely dangerous. So we can see the liquid hydrogen being stored at negative 423. The fill numbers stopped going up there, and you can see it leaking out here, which was the reason for the scrub. So the engineers discovered this. The mission control over there at NASA discovered this and realized it was just impossible for today. I believe it is very similar to what led them to scrub the mission on Tuesday. So hopefully they can get in there. I don't know. I am not a rocket scientist, so I don't know how big a fix is for something like this, or if they can decide how to go about doing it. But it is officially scrubbed for today due to that leak. A couple other cool views. There you can see the liquid hydrogen leaking out, our space space abort system right up there, up top. And then just some other cool views of the launch pad itself. All right, it looks like we have come to the end of this stream. There's not a whole lot else to say about this for today, unfortunately. Feel free to check out the NASA website, check out all those other things, get as in-depth as you can about this, because the more you know, I'm sure the more questions you will have, and hopefully we will be able to come back in just a few days and check out a actual rocket launch and see this thing go into space. Fingers crossed, September 5th. It seems to be just a rumor for now. I did not see that from any official sites, but that is all I have for you for now. So I am going to rerun the video that we ran at the beginning of this with the countdown basically to this launch, and then we will end the stream for today. Thanks for jumping in, and hopefully we will see you again.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Capcom, we're go for landing. Altitude 4200. Houston, you're go for landing, over. Roger, understand. Go for landing, 3,000 feet. Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
99, proceeded, 3, 2, 1, ignition. Right away, Houston. Vector grid. X-Sot.